Hey guys, it's Noah, and welcome to iHollywood TV. Well, storm chaser Josh Morgerman will bring viewers to the edge of their seats in the new series Mission Hurricane, airing on TMB's WeatherSpy this Sunday, with new episodes airing every Sunday on the network. Please welcome to the show Josh, joining us on Skype today. Hi, Josh. Welcome back.
Hey Noah, how you been?
I've been great. It's been a little while since we last talked.
I was thinking that, man, it's been a few years since my last series. Just feels
Yes.
like it just happened.
Hurricane Man, it was so great. Me and my grandfather, we watched and we loved it. It was such a fascinating, interesting series to watch on the Science Channel. And if you missed out, you can always catch up on Hulu. They have it on Hulu now.
That's that actually warms my heart that you watched it with your grandpa. That's it's family friendly entertainment.
Yeah. Family friendly entertainment. It was so good, and I'm really excited about this show that's coming back up. And before we get into that, you have made this a 30-year career chasing hurricanes. You've been battered, bruised, roughed up, stranded for days, and even presumed dead. Oh my goodness, that's crazy. But what attracted you to follow these hurricanes? And, what do you continue to learn each time that you move on to the next one?
Yeah, that's a great question. I say it's like kind of like a mental illness that you're born with because I think guys like me who really are full-time storm chasers and really just go for it. Uh, it's almost like your need for food or for sex. It's a very kind of primal need to just hunt down these storms. It just drives you even when you're not in the mood for it, even when you maybe like the timing isn't good. You just want to go and get inside them and just kind of experience the, I don't know, just like the wrath of nature. It's kind of like the experience when you get inside an intense hurricane. It's awe-inspiring and it's also scary. It's this weird combination of feelings, and it's like a drug.
And by the way, I mentioned, Hurricane Man was such a mind blowing series that aired on the Science Channel. You can always catch it on Hulu. But what was it like to take the viewers on the journey of showing and sharing with them knowledge about these chaotic events that occur?
Well, while I was making Mission Hurricane, this in this series, I look back at like my greatest adventures, and it was kind of cool because I had to, for each chase, I had to look back at it and think to myself, okay, what made this chase special? What was kind of like the
Hmm.
moral of the story? Because each chase, you kind of come out of it like a changed man. There's something about it that stood out. It tested you in some way. You kind of like you learned something about yourself. So that was, what I had to kind of find out for each one. Because when you're making TV, you can't just say, okay, well, then I went here and then I was in the storm and then I left. You got to make it into story. And the director I was working with, his name was Paul Emerson. He was really good at taking each episode, each expedition, and making a story, making story out of it. And that was good to look back at those storms and kind of evaluate them from that perspective and kind of create that.
Out of all the episodes that will run and air on WeatherSpy TV, is there a specific episode that you might recall one of your most terrifying that is maybe a little bit hard for you to go back and relive?
Yeah, there's a couple, by the way. I was, when we were looking back at my career and okay, what are the craziest adventures? I would say probably number one was Hurricane Dorian in the Bahamas. I was on
Hmm.
Great Abaco Island. This hurricane came. It was not just a category five, which is the top of the intensity scale, but it was way into category five. And it just, the whole island was just flattened. I wrote it out in a sort of a concrete, like a little classroom of a school, and looked like a nuclear bomb had dropped, and I was trapped there for days afterward, living in my car, which did not blow away. The car next to mine blew away. For some reason, mine was still there. And I lived in my car for days, just kind of on ration food. And, that was a, wasn't just the hurricane, but it was the sort of the test of survival. It was the survival afterward that really tested me. When I got back to civilization, I was just like, wow, man, glad I made it through that.
Now, to the viewers listening to our conversation this afternoon, they might think, how were you able to get established and have the resources to do this? But for anyone interested in following in your footsteps and are a massive fan of following storms and following you, what would you say to them?
It's a great question. So, if you want to do what I'm doing, which is hunting hurricanes and typhoons, and a typhoon is the same thing as a hurricane, it's just what they call it in East Asia. But if you want to
Right.
do this, it's definitely you need some resources. You need a passport and you need money to get around the world. Now,
Hmm.
at this point in my life, it's a career. Actually, I make money doing this, but that's not why I do it. But I happen to make
Right.
money doing this. But there were many years when this was just a very, very, very expensive hobby.
Mm.
So about that, I'll just say, life is about choices. Like how you design your life and how you
Hmm.
decide to spend your money and how you decide to spend your time, it's up to you, and you don't have
Right.
to live like the conventional kind of 9 to 5 life. You could find a way to design your life to support kind of whatever crazy life of adventure you want, as long as you really want to do it.
Now, Josh, how long did it take, for you to make this, a career and instead of it just being a hobby?
So for years and years, it was just like I said, an expensive kind of passion. And then it was
Right.
about a decade ago. It was after a typhoon in the Philippines. I was in a super typhoon Haiyan. It was a typhoon that wiped a city out. And at the height of the storm, water came rushing into our hotel. The whole city went underwater, and I
Mm.
saw some people in danger. And I just, by instinct, I just jumped into the water to rescue people and just drag them out of the water.
Hmm.
That got caught on camera, and that video went
Mm.
viral. It was all over all the news channels and everything. And then
Yeah.
Bill Whitaker at CBS News at that time, now he's on 60 Minutes. He saw that and he was like, "Wow!" And he had his producers come and find me, and they got me in the studio to talk about that experience. And my
Wow.
mom afterward was like, "Oh, you're pretty good on TV." And then I started thinking, so that actually was the start of my TV career, and I started from that point appearing on shows and stuff and talking about
Mhm.
storms, and then that built slowly into like a full-time, a real career where like I have, TV series and stuff like that.
That's awesome. And then from the Science Channel to the Weather Spy TV, and so many weather networks, they come after you for information also on these storms because you have the knowledge to share with them what could all go down. How does it feel to be able to share with people information that can help save someone's life before the storm chases or surrenders them?
It feels really good. It's one of the things that I love about it is that I can share my experiences and be helpful. I do a
Yeah.
lot of public appearances this time of year. This springtime is sort of pre-hurricane season, and so there's a lot of hurricane conferences and preparedness events,
Mm.
and I like to go to those. And what I'll do is I'll take my most crazy, wild videos, from inside buildings as they're blowing apart and stuff, the scary stuff, and I show that because I want to impress upon people, like, don't mess around with these things. I think a lot of people, until they're in a direct hit by a bad hurricane, they don't realize how scary and wild it is. And then, they don't really have a mental picture of it. And then when they're in one, they're like, wow, I'm never doing that again. So I like to kind of show them that through my kind of video and the experiences I've captured.
I think you would be so amazing, Josh, at going around to different schools in the U.S., just talking to kids about this type of stuff because they would be so interested in it. And then I think it would be just a really great topic for them to learn, wouldn't you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. In fact, it's funny you say that. I'm going to the
Yeah.
National Tropical Weather Conference this coming week on South Padre
Oh,
Island,
cool.
Texas. And before the conference, they're having sort of a little, like, I guess, like a kids version. So I'm making an appearance. They want
Oh,
me to do a
nice.
little talk to the students about my life and career. I'm actually, I'm conflicted about it because I think, violent weather is it's an exciting topic. And I think
Yeah.
that, 8 or 9 year olds, it's something that'll get their attention and maybe get them interested in science. But on the other hand, I'm very worried about, and I'm really conflicted about this. I want to like inspire young people, but I don't want to encourage them or inspire them to do dangerous things. So it's
Right.
always, I'm
I
always a little
agree.
conflicted about this.
Well, either way, they're going to be very fascinated when they hear your story because you're very inspiring. You have such knowledge that can hopefully, help get them, like you said, interested in science. But, being the top hurricane chaser in the world, when you look back on all that you've done, what continues to really keep you, loving this job and chasing these storms? Because, like you said before, you made this a career, it was a hobby, and you still, chased after this, for quite some time now.
I would say two things. There's two answers to that question.
Yeah.
One is, every time I get inside a hurricane, when I really get in it, when I hit the mark and I'm in the wild part of it, it still feels it still has this magical quality to me. And I've been inside 67 hurricanes, which is a
Wow.
world record. There's no one who's been in more hurricanes on the ground. despite that, it still feels magical every time I do it. And then the other thing is, I'm a very competitive guy, and storm chasing to some degree is a sport, and it's important to me to stay number one.
Now, what do you think that we might could expect differently during hurricane season this year than last year? Or is that something that, you basically will not know until it happens or gets closer to timing?
That's a great question. So, forecasting hurricane seasons, what the
Mhm.
season is going to be like,
Yeah.
it's its own specialty and it's not mine. However, there are some initial indicators. So, the US right now, if you look at hurricane history, it's very up and down. We have some decades where we're just getting slammed again and again. And then we have decades or 5 year periods where it's kind of quiet and nothing's hitting the US. Right now, or at least the last 5 or 6 years, we've been in a really bad phase. We've been just getting hit so many times by so many intense hurricanes all
Hmm.
along the Gulf Coast. I mean, it's been a crazy run. There are some indications that maybe this year it might not be as bad because we have what's called an El Nino. It's likely that we're going to get into what's called an El Nino, and I don't
Hmm.
want to get into like weather nerdery, but usually during an El Nino, the Atlantic hurricane season is not as crazy because it suppresses hurricane activity in the Atlantic a little bit. So that could help us out, but you never know. And it only takes one storm to create a catastrophe.
This is just a question off the top of my head, but why do hurricanes get names? Like, who sits there and says, I'm going to name this hurricane this?
Oh yeah, so up until 1950, hurricanes were not named. So when you look back
Mm.
at old hurricanes, like I grew up on Long Island in New York, and our worst hurricane was in 1938, and it approached Long Island so fast that it's now called the Long Island Express hurricane because it approached at the speed of a train. So hurricanes had nicknames like that, or the Labor Day storm in Florida, which devastated the Florida Keys on Labor Day. Starting in 1950, they started giving them women's names, and I think it was maybe the military guys were doing it first, and then the hurricane center started doing it. And they would just pick whatever names they wanted, and they would, like, I think they would sometimes like name them after their daughters and things like that. It was a
Mm.
very informal process. Other parts of the world started to do it too. I believe the US was the first to start naming storms, I think. But after a certain amount of time, it became sort of regulated. In the late 1970s, they added men's names to make it equal because some people didn't like that they were only named after women. It seemed sexist to some people.
Uh,
And then also now it's under this, all this is under the jurisdiction of the World Meteorological Organization. Now it's this very set process where it's actually
hmm.
it's decided by a committee at the World Meteorological Organization, and they make sure that the names are international so that everyone's covered. So, for example, in the Atlantic, we have English speakers, we have Spanish speakers, we also have French speakers and Creole speakers and Dutch speakers because of all the Caribbean islands. So if you look at the Atlantic names, there are all kinds of names, and some of them are hard for Americans to say. But I
Right.
guess for the French folks in Haiti, I guess some of our names are hard to say. So they try to make it kind of
Hmm.
equal, I guess, and give everyone a little bit of the action.
So when do they start planning the names for the hurricanes, or is it just like when one comes and happens, then they automatically name it?
So they have, I think, 5 or 6 lists,
Uh,
and they like it. There's like literally, so it's planned 6 years into the future, and
oh,
then once you get to the sixth list, you go back again to the first one. So it's actually you just it repeats again and again. However, if you have
uh,
a crazy hurricane that causes a lot of death or destruction, then
mm,
that name is retired, meaning it is officially taken off the list for good and it's replaced. So like Katrina, there will never be another Hurricane Katrina. That name was retired because of all the death and destruction it caused, and it was replaced by another women's name that starts with a K. I think it was K. I think was the new
is it
name.
because it's for bad luck? So they're like, oh, take that off. You know.
I think it's out of respect for the victims and also just for historical clarity. Because think about it, there was a Hurricane Katrina which devastated Mississippi and Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to 10 years later have another Hurricane Katrina, and then it's
Yeah,
confusing in the history books. What if they're both destructive? Then
that
which
makes
Hurricane
sense.
Katrina was it? It doesn't, it's just confusing. So noteworthy storms get retired.
Well, now let's take a look at a clip of Mission Hurricane premiering this weekend on WeatherSpy TV. Take a look.
This was just a chaser's nightmare.
It's really starting to blow. Watch out, Josh! Holy crap!
Oh of a sudden, Eric is opening the door and going out into that hallway. And Eric is like, someone's in trouble, a family's in danger. Little did I know, the next 17 minutes were going to be the most intense of my chasing career. This little room in this hotel was ground zero, the point of impact of the strongest hurricane in the history of the west coast of Mexico.
Josh Morgerman, thank you so much for joining us. Mission Hurricane premieres this Sunday, April 9th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the WeatherSpy TV. We appreciate your time, and it was so nice to chat with you once again.
Thanks, Noah. It's really it's great to be back on the show. Thank you.